If you woke up inside a novel and discovered that your wife was carrying another man's child, what would you do? Would you forgive her? Would you walk away? Or would you destroy everything she loved before she could destroy you? The man in today's story chose the third option. And by the time he realized what his revenge had cost him, 3 people were dead. His daughter hated him, and he was holding a gun to his own head. But what makes this story truly terrifying is that he remembered every second of it from his previous life. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in his place? Now let's begin. The moment Adrian Blackwood opened his eyes, he knew something was wrong. The ceiling above him wasn't familiar. The room wasn't familiar. Even the body he was lying in felt different. A sharp pain exploded inside his head. Thousands of memories crashed into his mind like a tidal wave. Names, faces, conversations, an entire lifetime. Adrian sat upright in bed, gasping for air. No way. His hands trembled. He recognized the room. He recognized the house. And most importantly, he recognized the world. Because this wasn't Earth. This was the world of a novel he had read before his death. 3 years ago, in his previous life, Adrian had been an office worker who spent every night reading web novels online. One of those novels had been called The Fall of House Ravensheim, a tragic story filled with betrayal, revenge, and heartbreak. It had become famous because almost every major character suffered a horrible ending. And now, he had been reincarnated into that very story. First, Adrian thought it was a dream, but when he saw his reflection in the mirror, he froze. The face staring back at him wasn't his own. Dark hair, gray eyes, a small scar above the left eyebrow. Lord Adrian Ravensheim, one of the novel's most tragic characters. The man whose life would eventually be destroyed by the people he loved most. Adrian felt cold sweat forming on his forehead. He remembered everything. Every chapter. Every twist. Every betrayal. Most importantly, he remembered how Adrian Ravensheim died. Alone. Broken. Forgotten. In the original novel, Adrian was a respected noble living in the northern territory of Eldoria. He wasn't rich compared to the royal family. He wasn't powerful compared to the empire's greatest warriors. But he had something many people envied. A loving family, a beautiful wife, a talented daughter, and a peaceful life. Unfortunately, that happiness wasn't destined to last. According to the novel, everything began when Adrian's childhood friend returned from the capital, a man named Victor Ashbourne. Victor had once been Adrian's closest friend. The two had grown up together, trained together, dreamed together. Then life separated them. Victor joined the Imperial Army. Adrian inherited his family's territory. For almost 20 years they barely saw each other. Then one day Victor returned. And with him came disaster. Adrian looked toward the calendar hanging on the wall. His heart nearly stopped. The date was exactly 3 months before Victor's arrival. 3 months before the beginning of Adrian's downfall. 3 months before the betrayal. He slowly sat back down. His mind raced. If he remembered the novel correctly, Victor would arrive claiming to suffer from a rare magical disease. A disease that had no cure. The healers would estimate he had less than a year to live. Because of their friendship, Adrian would invite him to stay nearby. His wife, Serafina, would volunteer to help care for him. That was where everything started. At first it would seem innocent. Then Serafina would begin spending more and more time with Victor. Then she would start missing family dinners. Then she would start lying. Then she would fall in love. And eventually, she would become pregnant. Not with Adrian's child, but Victor's. The memory made his stomach twist. In the original story, Adrian never saw the betrayal coming. He trusted both of them completely. When he finally learned the truth, it shattered him. His marriage collapsed. His daughter chose her mother. His rage consumed him. And the rest of the novel became a slow march toward destruction. Adrian stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the estate was peaceful. Servants moved through the gardens. Birds sang in the morning air. Everything looked normal. But Adrian knew better. A storm was coming. And unlike the original Adrian, he knew exactly when it would arrive. For several days, Adrian focused on understanding his new life. He studied memories, reviewed documents, observed the people around him. Most importantly, he watched Serafina, his wife, the future traitor of the novel. She was beautiful. Even Adrian couldn't deny it. Long silver hair, elegant posture, a smile that could charm almost anyone. The original Adrian had adored her. And strangely enough, this world's memories still carried those feelings, which made everything worse. Because every time he looked at her, he remembered what she would eventually do. One evening she entered his study carrying tea. "You're working too hard again." Adrian looked up. For a moment, guilt appeared in her eyes. Not because of any betrayal. That hadn't happened yet. But because she genuinely cared about him. At least right now. That was the cruel part. The novel never portrayed Serafina as evil. Weak? Yes. Selfish? Absolutely. But not evil. She simply allowed emotions to control her. And those emotions would destroy multiple lives. "You've been distant lately," she said softly. Adrian forced a smile. "Just tired." She placed the tea on his desk. "You should rest more." For several seconds they stared at each other. Serafina eventually smiled and left. The moment the door closed, Adrian's expression vanished. The novel had taught him something important. People rarely destroy your life because they hate you. Most of the time, they destroy it because they love someone else more. 2 months passed. Then one morning, a messenger arrived at the estate. Adrian already knew what the letter contained before opening it. His childhood friend was coming home. Victor Ashbourne would arrive in 3 days. The story had officially begun. That night Adrian sat alone in his study. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The letter rested on the desk. In the original novel, Adrian had been excited, happy, grateful. He had welcomed his old friend with open arms. This time was different, because Adrian knew something Victor didn't. This wasn't Victor's story. It wasn't Serafina's story. And it certainly wasn't Fate's story. This time, the man who knew the ending was holding the pen. And he intended to rewrite everything. 3 days later, the carriage carrying Victor Ashbourne rolled through the gates of Ravensshire Estate. Adrian watched from the front steps. The moment the carriage stopped, a tall man stepped down. Victor looked exactly as the novel had described him. Broad shoulders, dark blonde hair, a confident smile. The kind of man people naturally trusted. The kind of man women naturally noticed. For a brief moment, Adrian remembered the countless chapters where the original protagonist praised Victor's charisma. Then he remembered how those same chapters ended. Victor opened his arms. "Adrian!" The two men embraced. To everyone watching, it looked like 2 lifelong friends reuniting after years apart. Only Adrian knew the truth. He was hugging the man who would eventually destroy his family. Victor laughed. "It's been too long. Far too long." Servants carried luggage inside while Serafina emerged from the mansion. The moment Victor saw her, he froze. Only for a fraction of a second. Almost nobody noticed. But Adrian did. Because he had been waiting for it. That tiny pause had existed in the novel too. The exact moment Victor first saw Serafina after nearly 2 decades. The exact moment fate began tightening its grip. Serafina smiled politely. "Welcome to Ravensshire." Victor bowed slightly. "My lady." His eyes lingered a little too long. Not enough to seem improper. Just enough for Adrian to notice. The first crack. The first warning. The first step toward disaster. That evening they shared dinner together. The atmosphere felt warm, comfortable. Victor told stories from the capital. Stories about military campaigns, political scandals, noble feuds. Everyone laughed. Even Adrian found himself enjoying parts of the conversation. That was the dangerous thing about Victor. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't some villain plotting evil schemes. He was simply human. And humans could cause unimaginable destruction without ever intending to. Eventually Serafina asked the question Adrian had been expecting. "So what brings you home after all these years?" Victor's smile faded. The dining hall grew quiet. Slowly he placed his wine glass down. Then he spoke. "The healers found something. Just like the novel." Every word was exactly the same. "Ether rot." Serafina frowned. The color drained from a servant's face. Everyone in the empire knew that disease. It was rare, incurable, and usually fatal. Victor forced a weak smile. "The healer's estimate may be a year." Silence. Heavy silence. Serafina covered her mouth. Adrian's daughter, Lyra, looked horrified. Only Adrian remained calm, because he already knew. He already knew every sentence Victor would speak, every tear Serafina would shed, every mistake they would eventually make. Victor laughed awkwardly. "Don't look so depressed. I'm not dead yet." But nobody laughed. The conversation never truly recovered after that. Later that night, Adrian stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens. As expected, Serafina joined him. "It's terrible," she whispered. "What is?" "Victor." Adrian glanced at her. She looked genuinely saddened. Again, that was the cruel part. Nobody started the story trying to betray anyone. It happened gradually. One choice at a time. One excuse at a time. One emotional weakness at a time. "He must be terrified," she said. Adrian nodded. "I'm sure he is." She looked toward Victor's guest house visible beyond the gardens. "We should help him." There it was. The first domino. In the original story, Adrian immediately agreed. This time he chose his words carefully. "Help him how?" She hesitated. "Visit him. Support him. Make sure he doesn't spend his final year alone." Everything sounded reasonable, compassionate, kind. The perfect beginning to a disaster. Adrian studied her expression, then nodded. "Within reason." She smiled. And for some reason that smile made his chest ache. Because he remembered exactly where that road led. The following weeks unfolded almost exactly as the novel described. First, Serafina visited Victor once every few days. Then every other day. Then almost daily. She brought books, meals, medicine, flowers, small acts of kindness. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing suspicious. Not yet. Meanwhile, Victor's condition appeared to worsen. He lost weight, became pale, coughed frequently. The healers confirmed the disease was progressing. Everyone pitied him, especially Serafina. One afternoon, Adrian returned early from inspecting farms across the territory. As he entered the mansion, he noticed something unusual. Lyra was sitting alone, reading. "No lessons today?" His daughter looked up. "Mother canceled them." "Why?" "She went to see Victor." Again, Adrian glanced at the clock. It was nearly sunset. Serafina had left before breakfast. His jaw tightened. In the novel, this was the stage where family dinners slowly disappeared. The stage where emotional dependence began replacing friendship. The stage where nobody noticed the danger. Except him. That evening Serafina returned. She looked exhausted, but strangely happy. During dinner she spent most of the meal talking about Victor. How brave he was. How unfair life could be. How lonely he felt. How strong he remained despite everything. Every conversation eventually returned to Victor. Adrian noticed something else. So did Lyra. His daughter quietly pushed food around her plate. Watching. Listening. Not speaking. The same thing happened the next day. And the day after that. Then one night Adrian made an unexpected discovery. He was walking through the eastern corridor when he heard laughter. Not from the dining room. Not from the library. The garden. Outside. He followed the sound. Beyond a hedge, moonlight illuminated two figures sitting beside a fountain. Victor and Serafina. They were laughing together, sharing wine, talking quietly. Neither noticed him. Adrian stood there for several moments, watching. Neither touched the other. Neither said anything inappropriate. Yet something felt wrong. Not because of what was happening, but because of what wasn't. Neither of them seemed aware of the world around them. only each other. The emotional boundary between friendship and something more was beginning to blur. Adrian quietly walked away. Back in his study, he poured himself a drink. Then another. And another. Not because he was surprised. He wasn't. He had known this would happen. Yet seeing it with his own eyes felt different. Far more painful. Because these weren't fictional characters anymore. This wasn't a novel. This was his life. Several days later, he received another surprise. One that didn't exist in the original story. A letter. The sender was unfamiliar. A healer from the capital. Adrian frowned while reading. Then read it again. Then a third time. His eyes narrowed. The contents were impossible. Or rather, they should have been impossible. The letter referenced Victor's diagnosis. Apparently, the healer had reviewed records from the capital's medical archives. And according to those records, Victor's disease wasn't progressing. It was stabilizing. Adrian read the line repeatedly. Stabilizing. Not worsening. Not terminal. Not dying. His pulse quickened. In the original novel, nobody questioned the diagnosis. Nobody investigated. Nobody looked deeper. But Adrian wasn't bound by the original story anymore. Immediately, he began making inquiries, sending messages, paying informants, contacting physicians. The answers arrived gradually, each one more disturbing than the last. Then finally the truth emerged. Victor had never been given 1 year to live. His condition was serious, but manageable. With treatment, he might survive decades. Adrian stared at the report spread across his desk. Rage slowly built inside him. Not because Victor was healthy, because Victor had lied. The question was why. Had he lied intentionally? Had he exaggerated? Or had someone else manipulated the diagnosis? Whatever the answer, the original story had hidden this information. And if Victor wasn't truly dying, everything changed. Absolutely everything. That night Adrian sat alone in darkness, thinking, calculating, planning. For the first time since arriving in this world, he realized something important. The novel he remembered wasn't entirely true. There were secrets even the readers never learned, which meant the future was no longer predictable, and that made everything far more dangerous. Meanwhile, only a few hundred feet away, Serafina sat beside Victor in his guest house. The distance between them growing smaller with every conversation. Neither realizing they were standing on the edge of a cliff. And soon, someone was going to fall.